My name is Kelly, and I was just 14 when my mother abandoned me at Miami airport. I still remember as she pressed $150 into my hand and whispered coldly, "Michael, and I deserve a vacation without baggage." Then she wheeled her Louis Vuitton suitcase toward the gate with my stepfather and his kids. I stood frozen among strangers, drowning in the noise of rolling suitcases and departure calls, realizing I had been discarded like an old toy. Before I tell you how I survived that day, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever felt betrayed by the very person who should have protected you. My early childhood memories are quite pleasant. My dad's old Camry would sigh into the driveway at 5:40, and I'd hear his keys clink in the bowl by the door. He'd loosen his tie, always crooked, and pick up whichever library book we had, sometimes just a tattered fairy tale collection with a missing cover. Even after long days, he'd make the wolves sound hungry and the princesses brave. My mom ran the kitchen like a little diner. Saturday mornings were hers, a mixing bowl, a chipped blue spatula, the smell of butter and vanilla. Pancakes were our family's currency, tiny ones for me, a big Mickey-shaped one when I got an A on a spelling test, banana pancakes if the week had been rough. She'd hum along to the radio and swipe my bangs off my forehead with a floured thumb. We didn't have much, but we had rituals, pancakes, stories, and Sunday walks around Lake Eola, where we fed stale bread to greedy swans and posed for pictures that never turned out right because Dad always blinked. Back then, life was simple in the small ways that count. My room had glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling and a poster of a ballerina I wanted to be when I grew up. On summer nights, if the wind was right, I could hear the faint pop of fireworks from the theme parks across town, like someone cracking their knuckles in the sky. I believed that love, like our blue shutters, might fade but would hold. When I was 9, everything loosened and then snapped. Arguments started sudden and loud, then suffocatingly humid afterward. They whispered more than they yelled, which somehow felt worse. Papers appeared on the dining table where the puzzle pieces usually went. My mother's mouth was a hard line, my father's laugh shrank until it vanished. The night they told me, the pancakes sat untouched and heavy on our plates. "We love you," Dad said, and his voice wobbled. We can't live together." Mom stared at the salt shaker and said nothing. Father moved to Texas a month later, boxes, a rental truck, a goodbye that tasted like cardboard. I remember the smell of his aftershave on my jacket for weeks after, and the emptiness of our driveway at 5:40 p.m. The keys no longer clinked in the bowl. I tried to be brave in 3rd grade, pretending to be fascinated by long division so I wouldn't think about the shape of our family changing. He called at first every Wednesday night. We talked about school projects, and he promised to visit soon. Texas felt like the moon, big, far, and unreal. The time difference wasn't much, but it was enough for missed calls, for "I'll call you back in 5" that stretched into days. Mom stayed with me. She said the line she would repeat for years, "Men come and go, but we are a team." She sounded like a coach before a game we hadn't practiced for. For a while I believed her. We made new rituals. Cereal for dinner when the electricity bill scared her, thrift store treasure hunts on Saturdays, the two of us cheering for sales like touchdowns. But the team started to crack. She picked up nights to make ends meet, first at the hospital laundry, then bartending at a hotel by the highway. Her hours slipped and her temper shortened. Dishes clinked louder, cabinet doors closed harder. She was always tired, mascara smudged into half-moons beneath her eyes, snapping at me for leaving socks on the couch or for breathing too loudly when she was trying to sleep. So I learned silence like a second language. I watched the front door, trying to guess which version of her would walk in, the mom who used to flip pancakes into my plate with a tata, or the woman with a headache who wanted the house dim and the television low. Sometimes I'd hear her crying behind the bathroom door. I'd sit on the hallway rug and press my palms flat to the cool hardwood, trying to send comfort through the floorboards. At school, I pretended nothing had changed. I laughed at lunch, handed in homework on time, and told my teacher everything was fine when she asked why I seemed tired. My best friend, Deja, had both her parents and a backyard big enough for 2 trampolines. I loved going there, loved the smell of their laundry and the way her mom packed us snacks with handwritten notes. But it also made me feel like a tourist in a normal life I used to recognize. I always went home eventually, back to the blue shutters and the air conditioner's wheeze and the silence that crowded our living room like extra furniture. Dad sent postcards from Texas, a star the size of a dinner plate, a long stretch of highway that seemed to go nowhere, a desert sunset he said looked like a bruise that was healing. He always wrote, "Proud of you," and drew a little stick figure of the two of us holding hands. He called sometimes. He missed, often. I never knew whether to be angry or sad, so I settled for busy. The school bus dropped me off, I did my chores, and I tried to shrink and still be seen. Mom's new shifts meant new smells, cigarettes clinging to her clothes, a lemony cleaner that didn't hide the sourness of spilled beer. Tips rattled in a jar on the counter, more coins than bills. We stopped buying pancake mix. Sundays lost their sweetness. Men come and go, but we're a team, she repeated when the rent was due and her eyes were rimmed in red. I nodded and cleaned the sticky ring under the jar. I noticed her phone lighting up late at night, a little glow under the blanket of our house. New names, laughter that wasn't for me, a lipstick I didn't recognize appearing on the bathroom sink. She started wearing heels to work for better tips, she said, and the next morning she'd shuffle to the coffee maker in silence, her ankle strapped with an elastic bandage, the heel marks tattooing the mat by the door. The man appeared first as a story I wasn't supposed to hear. "A regular," she said into the phone, voice soft in a way it wasn't with me. Then as a shadow at the curb, an engine idling, bass thrumming, my mother checking her reflection in the microwave door. A name floated through the house like a trial balloon, Michael. "Just a friend," she told me, tightening her ponytail. "Don't wait up." She left a plate of cold spaghetti for me and left. I washed the fork, turned off the kitchen light, and watched two lizards race each other across the warm stucco, their tiny feet a blur. The shutters were still blue. I tried to believe that meant something. Michael owned a chain of nightclubs, the kind with velvet ropes and bouncers who looked past you like you were fog. His house sat behind a coated gate and a hedged wall that smelled like clipped boxwood. Inside, the floors were cold marble with veins like lightning. The pool out back was a perfect turquoise rectangle that never had leaves in it, as if weather was not allowed to be messy here. Speakers were hidden in palm trees, sleek loungers lined up like soldiers. Even the towels were white enough to make me nervous about touching them with my human hands. He had 2 children, Ashley and Tom, who moved through the place like they had been born in it. Ashley was a spoiled fashionista in the precise, glossy way Instagram teaches, lashes too long for blinking, a closet lit like a boutique, sneakers that cost more than our old rent. Her vanity ring light cast a permanent halo on her door. She spoke in brands and limited drops, shot mirror selfies like it was a job, and left a powdery scent that said nothing about her and everything about the store that sold it. Tom was the opposite, a withdrawn gamer behind a closed door, headset clamped on, LED lights pulsing blue and purple. His room smelled like warm electronics and energy drink. He barely looked up when anyone entered, his fingers moving so fast they sounded like falling rain on plastic. Mom was a new person with a new calendar. She came home from salons glowing with fresh hair and tiny paper bracelets still around her wrist, carrying shopping bags stiff with tissue paper. She laughed loudly and unnaturally in Michael's friend's company, the kind of laugh that checked every few seconds to see if it was landing. She traded our pancake mornings for green smoothies left sweating on the counter, traded grocery lists for spa appointments, traded me for conversations about property and partnerships I could not follow. Her phone wore a lacquered case. Her nails matched it. When she hugged me, I smelled perfume instead of flour. I tried to fit in the way you try a shoe that is half a size off and hope it stretches. I offered to help Ashley with her homework, setting my notebook on her glass desk, careful not to leave fingerprints. I explained thesis statements and transitions, drew little arrows in the margins. She nodded, thanked me from somewhere very far away, and later I found my notes in the trash under a new box for a limited edition lip gloss. With Tom, I watched him play from the beanbag chair near his door, learning the names of his worlds, the vocabulary of quests and builds, the difference between grinding and camping. I brought him a plate once and set it near his keyboard. He lifted the headset slightly, mumbled thanks, then slid the plate aside so it would not crowd his mouse. Michael's friends orbited the house on weekends, trailing stories about yachts and tennis. The men wore quiet watches and shoes that never squeaked. The women had ponytails that swished on beat and legs the color of almonds. They spoke a fluent language of memberships, and the courts were resurfaced, and we're chartering next month, a language with no words for library cards or BOGO sales. I once tried to mention a book I loved. 3 sentences in, someone interrupted to ask Michael about VIP tables for a fight night. My words dissolved into the air like a sugar packet stirred too long. At dinner, the dining room felt like a stage, a table long enough to require effort, 2 end chairs that mattered, silverware placed like little soldiers. A server, there were always people, soft-footed, efficient, poured water from a bottle I couldn't pronounce. Conversation hopped over me like stepping stones over a stream. A laugh about a regatta in Palm Beach, a sigh about the difficulty of finding good clay courts, a murmur about a DJ whose fee had doubled. Mom's laugh rode those waves easily now. I would clear my throat, offer something small about school or a science project, and watch it sink without a trace. The house had rules that were never written but constantly enforced by looks. Don't sit on the white sofa with wet hair. Don't leave your backpack by the stairs. Don't ask the driver to stop for anything not on the schedule. Schedules became a religion. There were laminated sheets on the pantry door listing deliveries and workouts and guests. My name appeared in small print for drop-offs and pickups, wedged between Pilates and Builders 10 a.m. Sometimes my mom would point to the sheet and say, "See? We're all organized now," like organization was the same as home. Mornings were a chorus of quiet machines, espresso hissing, blender whirring, robotic vacuum humming, the pool filter whispering to itself. I missed the clatter of our old kitchen, the squeak of our cheap spatula. Here, even the cabinets closed softly, refusing to slam, as if anger was impolite. Lunches came in labeled containers with someone else's neat handwriting. Groceries arrived in boxes you broke down and hid before guests saw them. It all worked, and none of it felt alive. Ashley floated above me at school, too, her world a careful grid of influencers and followers. She posted photos by the pool with captions about self-care Sundays and never tagged me even when I snapped the picture. I tied ribbons into Tom's little sister's hair, except there was no sister, just the woman who came twice a week to do laundry, who smiled kindly while I learned how to fold fitted sheets and pretend I belonged. Tom's laughter came once, sudden and bright, when something absurd happened in his game. I smiled before I knew it, warmed by the sound. He glanced at me, surprised I had heard him, and then the headset went back on like a door closing. Mom began to correct my clothes, not those shoes, or grab a cardigan. She corrected my voice, softer. She mouthed across the table when a story of mine lasted longer than the attention span allotted to me. She complimented me to other people the way you compliment a lamp. She's very helpful. In front of Michael, she tilted her face toward him like a sunflower. When he spoke, she waited, eyes bright. When I spoke, she checked her phone. On the nights Michael hosted, low lights made the house prettier than it felt. I would slip out to the patio and dangle my feet in the pool, watching the ripples move under pin lights like fish. From inside came the sound of ice against glass, a roar of adults enjoying themselves. Someone would slide open the door and ask if I needed anything in a tone that meant no. I would say I was fine and think of our old neighborhood where people knocked instead of buzzing, where they shouted hello across lawns because the fences were chain link and honesty traveled easily through those. Anyway, I kept hoping they would see me if I stacked enough small good deeds in a visible place. Some nights, Ashley would ask where her blue notebook had gone, and I would produce it from the coffee table drawer. She would say, "Oh," in a tone that carried no weight, and leave with a cloud of perfume. Some nights, Tom would hand me his empty plate without looking and say, "Thanks," and I would measure that one small word like medicine and try not to drink it all at once. In this house, everything worked, and I disappeared so smoothly you could have mistaken it for grace. Michael made the announcement like a showman revealing a prize. He clapped his hands once in the open kitchen, voice bright enough to bounce off the marble. "We're going to the Dominican Republic. 2 weeks at a 5-star resort." Ashley squealed and opened a shopping app before he finished the sentence. Tom pushed his headset back and finally smiled. Mom wrapped her arms around Michael's waist as if the words were a bouquet he'd handed her. I stood there with a glass of tap water and the sudden feeling that the floor had tilted just a little. Within an hour, a group text bloomed on Mom's phone with a name like Dream Team. Links to resort photos, swim-up bars, and cabana packages flooded the chat. Ashley sent screenshots of bikinis that looked like string and hope. Tom asked about Wi-Fi speed and if the resort allowed consoles in rooms. Michael answered in bullet points: private beach, tennis courts, all-inclusive. My phone stayed silent. I checked it twice, then a third time, pretending I wasn't waiting to be added. The next day, everyone went suitcase hunting. The trunk of Michael's SUV swallowed glossy luggage, a sand-colored set with little metal initials for Mom, a neon hardshell for Ashley, a sleek matte black roller for Tom. When I asked if I should pick one, Mom didn't look up from comparing SPF sprays. "You have everything you need," she said. "You're not going to stand out." Her tone tried to sound practical. It landed like a small slap. My old cloth duffel came from the hall closet, smelling faintly of our old house and rain. I counted my babysitting money that night, 5s and 1s with glitter from the little girl's craft table still stuck to the bills. I rode my bike to the outlet mall and bought a modest blue swimsuit on clearance, the kind with straps that actually stayed in place. I told myself it was pretty in a quiet way. The cashier folded it too carefully, as if the thin fabric needed protection from me. On the way home, I imagined the ocean as a patient line stretching to the horizon, the kind you could join if you were polite enough. Travel talk took over the house. A stack of glossy resort brochures sat on the counter. Michael's assistant emailed confirmations, airport parking, lounge passes, a private transfer with cold towels. Ashley filmed a packing haul at her vanity, tags fanning the screen. Tom researched excursions and announced he'd only go anywhere that didn't involve horses. Mom fluttered through rooms with tape and a Sharpie, labeling packing cubes like a coach mapping plays. My name showed up on a post-it stuck to a laundry basket. It was written smaller. I tried to join the current. "Do I need any shots?" I asked one morning. "Do we need power adapters?" Mom was spreading serums into her skin in the kitchen's reflection of the microwave door. "Michael's handling it," she said. "Don't overthink." Later, I saw a text pop up on her phone. "Travel clinic appointment confirmed, M.A.T. I told myself maybe mine had been scheduled earlier. Maybe there was a second message I hadn't seen. Ashley and Mom went swimsuit shopping, just to compare sizes, and came back with 3 bags each. They laid everything out on the dining table, shiny fabric and sherbet colors, sandals with delicate straps, wide brim hats that said things in cursive like, "out of office." I held up my folded blue suit for a second, then slipped it back into my drawer like a secret. Tom unboxed a new portable console and a pair of noise-canceling headphones. "So I can sleep on the plane," he said. I nodded, wondering what my plane seat would even be. One afternoon, Michael brought home a leather passport wallet with 4 slots and a zipper that purred. He set it on the island and slid in documents with quick, confident hands. "Keeps everything in one place," he said. Mom pressed a kiss to his shoulder. Ashley asked if the wallet would look good in photos. Tom didn't look up. I stood at the sink rinsing a glass and watched the zipper close. I told myself there were more documents in a drawer. The warnings were small and reasonable by themselves. Ashley's new luggage tag set came with 4 monogram tags. She looped them on and said, "Cute, right?" Tom printed boarding pass mock-ups to test his sleeve. He made 4 templates because that was how the page fit best. Mom bought sunscreen in a family pack of 4 and joked about 1 for each limb. The resort itinerary Michael printed listed guests by first name for the private check-in. I scanned the sheet and found Michael, Elaine, Ashley, Tom. I decided there was a second page somewhere, still in the printer tray. I kept preparing anyway. I hunted down my birth certificate and made sure my passport was where I'd last seen it, tucked inside a shoebox. I asked Mom where we'd be staying so I could picture the room. Oceanfront, she said, walking past me. 2 queen beds and a sleeper sofa. It'll be fine. I didn't ask who would be on the sofa. A week before departure, I came home early from babysitting. The house was quiet except for the pool filter's whisper and the faint murmur of voices in Michael's office. The door was mostly closed. I recognized Mom's laugh first, soft and careful, and then the rustle of paper. I stepped closer to ask if I could use the car to buy travel-size shampoo. Before I knocked, I heard Michael's voice low. What about Kelly? A pause, like a held breath. Mom answered quickly, almost relieved to say it. Don't worry. Everything's taken care of. I stood there with my hand half raised, the wood cool under my fingertips. The words didn't make sense. They felt like a puzzle with missing corners. I told myself, taken care of meant my seat was already picked, my meals already requested, my name somewhere safer than paper. I let my hand drop, backed away quietly, and pretended the pool's blue was the ocean I would soon see. At the time, I didn't understand what they were talking about. I remember how cold AC licked my arms as we rolled our suitcases toward the check-in counter. The line glittered with resort wear, straw hats, white linen, a parade of sunscreen and pearls. Michael took the lead the way he always did, a hand on his silver carry-on, the other guiding Ashley's cart piled with glossy shopping bags. Tom trailed behind with his headphones on, blinking at a game. Mom's heels tapped like a metronome. I kept close, cradling my backpack with the cheap blue swimsuit folded inside, the one I'd bought with babysitting money. On the counter, the airline agent laid out the passports with a neat slap, one beside the other like red bricks. Michael. Ashley. Tom. Mom. My name didn't land. I waited for the 5th thud, the one that would pull the knot from my chest. It never came. Instead, the agent glanced up with a professional smile, already reaching for the bag scale. Where's mine? I asked, my voice too small for the noise of rolling wheels and departure chimes. I tried again, louder. Mom, where's my passport? My ticket? The look she gave me was polished and brittle, the expression she used with Michael's friends when a server spilled wine. Kelly, honey, come here, she said, fingers closing over my wrist. She pulled me aside, away from the counter, away from the polite eyes of the agent and the impatient eyes of Ashley. We stopped beneath a screen that flashed beachy names I couldn't pronounce. The board beeped. My heart kept missing beats. Kelly, she began, smoothing my hair as if I were a stray ribbon. This is a vacation for us. You have to stay. This is your chance to learn independence. For a second, the words didn't register. I stared at the 4 passports. 4. My mouth went dry. But I'm your daughter. It came out higher than I wanted, trembly and ugly, but true. She didn't flinch. She slid her designer wallet open and pressed folded bills into my palm as if she were donating to a cause. 150. Be practical. The money felt warm from her hand and sickeningly light. Mrs. Jenkins, our neighbor, has a spare key. You'll be fine. We need to enjoy our vacation. We don't need any burden. The word hit harder than any slap. Burden? I thought of being 9 and hearing, men come and go, but we are a team, and wondering when a team benches its own kid. I can be quiet, I said. I won't be a problem. I can share a bed with Ashley, I can. Ashley snorted without looking at me, busy taking a selfie with a straw hat crooked over her smooth hair. We aren't doing bunk beds, she told her phone, as if I were an unpaid extra passing through the frame. Tom flicked his eyes up, then down again, the game more interesting than my pleading. Michael checked his watch. Boarding in 20, he called, his voice carrying the way rich men's voices do. We'll miss the lounge. Mom's hand, still on my shoulder, tensed. Her face shifted, soft patience hardening into checkout time efficiency. Kelly, listen. This is grown-up time. 2 weeks. You can handle 2 weeks. Feed the cat. School starts late this year anyway. There's pasta in the pantry. I swallowed so hard it hurt. The agent called next and someone waved a beach tote past us that smelled like coconut oil and brand new plastic. I wanted the floor to open. I wanted someone, anyone, to say this was a joke. Even a cruel one would have been better than the math I couldn't solve. Mom, I tried one last time, the word feeling too small to contain the panic inside it. Please. Please don't leave me. Her eyes slid over my face. Not searching, not really seeing, just confirming. You're strong, she said, as if strength were a thing to be assigned like chores. You'll understand when you're older. Michael stepped closer, the scent of expensive cologne and airplane cabins whooshing in with him. We're losing time, he warned, already stacking the passports with a clap that sounded like a door shutting. Security's a zoo. Mom nodded, business concluded. She tucked her wallet back into the LV bag I'd once touched with wonder when it arrived in its silky dust cover. She smoothed her blouse, adjusted her sunglasses on top of her head though we were indoors, and pressed her lips to my hair. It was the kind of kiss you give to a niece or to a doll you're putting away. Be good, she said. Don't spend it all at once. I stared at the money. 350s creased. Each bill felt like a verdict. How am I supposed to? The sentence fell apart. The terminals hummed. A toddler wailed somewhere. A janitor's cart squeaked past, the mop water sloshing like a tiny tide. The departure board refreshed with a flicker, and for a second the whole room seemed to blink. Behind us, Ashley held up her suitcase to Michael. Is premium baggage included? She asked. I'm not paying for overweight. Tom tugged at his hoodie sleeve and muttered, Wi-Fi at the resort better be decent, to no one in particular. They moved like a unit practiced in leaving. I closed my fingers around the cash until the edges bit. Please, I whispered, but I didn't know whether I was asking her or the world or the screen that kept listing flights to places I'd never see. Mom angled me slightly, lining me up with a bench, like she was parking me. Text if there's an emergency, she said. Charge your phone. Don't talk to strangers. And Kelly. She glanced at the agent, then back at me. Her voice dropped into that brittle, cheerful register she used for Instagram stories and thank you speeches. Don't make a scene. Then she turned. Just turned. The LV wheels clicked, Michael's carry-on rolled, the passports flashed at security with practiced ease. Ashley adjusted her hat. Tom tucked his game into his pocket without pausing it. They flowed into the line under the sign that said departures, bright as a commercial, complete as a family portrait with a missing corner nobody fusses about. A woman brushed past and apologized, and her kindness sliced me open because it wasn't hers to give. Somewhere, a gate agent laughed. The floor hummed beneath my sneakers, endless belts and motors carrying other people's lives forward. I wanted to follow. I wanted to sprint, to throw myself between the stanchions and shout her name until security came. But I knew exactly how that would end. Michael's sigh, Ashley's eye roll, Tom's stare, Mom's smile that meant behave. I knew I would be the problem, the story told later as proof that they'd done the right thing. I opened my hand. The bills lay there like a tiny raft in a huge fluorescent sea. I tucked them into my pocket with fingers that didn't feel like mine. The strap of my backpack cut into my shoulder. Inside, the cheap blue swimsuit waited, ridiculous and hopeful. I swallowed again, tasting salt and plastic. Final call for Santo Domingo, the speaker announced, and my mother, in her sandals and new sundress, didn't look back. Not once. She placed her tray on the conveyor, lifted her hands, walked through the arch that beeped for other people. The line moved, the arch lit green, and she disappeared into the bright, unreachable beyond. I sat on the hard plastic chairs until my legs went numb. The terminal air was too cold and smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee, and the loudspeaker kept repeating instructions in English and Spanish like a lullaby for people who actually belonged there. I didn't. I stared so long at the departure board that the names of the cities blurred. Their flight, my mother's new life in capital letters, changed from boarding to final call to departed. A small white airplane icon drifted across a cartoon map, and I felt something in me lift away with it. My backpack sat on my lap like a seatbelt I was too scared to unbuckle. Inside was the cheap blue swimsuit I'd never wear, a paperback I couldn't read, a phone charger I couldn't use because every outlet was full. My battery icon bled red, 7%, then 5, then 3. I lowered the brightness, closed every app, held the phone like a pet I was trying to keep alive. The cash my mother had shoved at me, 3 wrinkled 50s, burned in my pocket with the guilty heat of stolen money. I could have bought a charger I didn't need, a sandwich I couldn't swallow, a taxi to a house that didn't feel like mine. Instead, I just sat and listened to wheels clatter, babies cry, and strangers say, "See you soon," to people who turned and waved back. Time went strange, stretchy, and mean. A cleaning crew scraped gum from under the seats. A man in a flamingo shirt fell asleep and snored. A little girl dragged a stuffed llama in circles until her mother bribed her with gummies. Twice a security officer walked past slow, his eyes flicking over me, probably checking if I was lost or trouble or both. I gripped my backpack tighter and tried to look like a person with a plan. At 2%, my hands started to shake. I opened my contacts, scrolled past names that didn't fit the moment, classmates, teachers, Deja, and stopped on Dad. I hadn't called him in 3 years. Not for my last birthday, not when I got an A in biology, not when I started needing glasses. Every time I thought about him, it hurt less to do nothing than to try and hear the phone ring through the miles between Orlando and Texas and the space my mother had carved between us. I told myself he had a new life, too. But I pressed call anyway. 1 ring. 2. On the 3rd, a click, the rustle of breath, and then a voice I knew better than any fairy tale. "Kelly? My God, where are you?" The sound of my name in his mouth hit me harder than I expected. Everything I'd been holding with white knuckles slid to the floor. Words crashed over each other. "Mom, airport, no ticket," she said, "Independence. There's only me here, please." I didn't know, it came out messy and wet, and I hated crying in public, hated how people glanced and then politely looked away, hated how my throat made that broken little animal sound I couldn't control. He didn't ask me to slow down. He didn't tell me to calm down. He said, with a steadiness that reached across states and years and found the part of me curled small inside, "Stay there. I'm flying to you." But I looked at the board like it could answer things about helicopters and pilots and money and whether fathers keep promises. "How? It's far, and my phone." "Stay where you are," he repeated, firm and warm at the same time, like he was shrugging off a jacket and wrapping it around my shoulders. "Text me your exact terminal if you can. If your phone dies, it's okay. I'll find you. Don't move. I'm coming." The call ended because my battery finally gave up. The screen flashed black, and for a second panic clawed back up my throat. Then I breathed, slow like I did in the nurse's office when I had to get a shot. I moved to the wide windows that looked out over the tarmac. It was like a board game out there, all painted lines and crawling pieces, baggage carts trundling, orange-vested workers waving bright wands, planes nosing up to gates like big polite beasts coming in for water. The sun made the heat shimmer, but inside the AC kept goosebumps on my arms. I pressed my forehead to the glass anyway, trying to convince the world I was still here. A woman in a TSA uniform handed me a tiny paper cup of water without a word. The airline agent from earlier, the one who had watched the 4 passports line up, slid me a pack of peanut butter crackers over the counter like it was a secret. I ate one slowly. Salt burned the back of my throat. I looked down at my reflection in the window, puffy eyes, red nose, hair doing its own thing, and thought I looked like a stray someone had forgotten to claim. The light shifted from hard to syrupy, painting the plains gold. Somewhere a TV played a loop of a beach I would not see. And then the rhythm changed. The ground crew began pointing, the way birds all turn at once before a storm. A black speck approached low over the runway, chopping the air into pieces. The sound reached us first, a thudding that went bone deep, vibrating the glass. People pressed closer to the windows. Someone said, "Are helicopters even allowed here?" And someone else said, "Must be a medical evac," and I just stood up so fast I hit my knee. The helicopter descended, rotor wash whipping trash into little cyclones and flattening a row of palms beyond the fence. It didn't land at a helipad, I didn't see one. It settled on an open patch of tarmac near a service road, neat as a dragonfly choosing a leaf. The side door slid open. No security detail climbed out, no crew with clipboards, no man with a cap. Just him. jeans, a navy jacket, a button-down wrinkled in honest places. His hair was grayer at the temples than the last time I'd seen him. His walk was exactly the same. He shielded his eyes, scanning the windows like a kid searching for his science fair poster. For one tiny, scared moment, I thought I'd imagined him into being. Then he saw me. Even through thick glass and distance, I knew the second his eyes locked on mine. He lifted his hand in a hello that was also a promise. Everything after that moved quickly and slowly at once. A manager appeared with a radio. Somebody led me through a side door I didn't know existed. The hallways smelled like rubber and wind. A worker handed me headphones I didn't put on. The world became wind and slapping noise and the wild, hot smell of jet fuel, and then my father was there, solid and real, his jacket warm from the sun. "Hey," he said, voice rough around the edges, and pulled me in. He hugged me like he was taking inventory, like he needed to count bones and breaths and be sure I was all there. He tucked my head under his chin and promised me we would come out fine. "Well," he said into my hair, steady and certain over the sound of blades, "this time I won't let you go." Houston smelled different the second we stepped off the tarmac. Warm air thick with cut grass and gasoline, a sweetness under the heat that the ocean air in Florida never had. We drove past flat stretches of highway and glittering glass buildings that caught the late sun like they were drinking it. Dad kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting near mine on the console, as if ready to catch me if I slipped, even sitting down. We didn't talk much. I watched billboards for crawfish boils and furniture warehouses zip by and tried to swallow the ache that rose every time I remembered the moment my mother turned away. His neighborhood was quiet in that careful Texas way, low brick houses, deep porches, flags snapping on short poles, sprinklers ticking in measured arcs. He pulled into a driveway where a basketball hoop leaned over the garage, the net new and white. The garage door opened and two bikes hung politely from hooks. A toolbox gleamed. "Home," he said, and when the engine stopped, the silence felt like a held breath finally let go. Inside, a golden retriever's toys were tucked in a basket by the couch, even though there was no dog, not yet. Shoes were lined by the door. On the entry table stood a framed photo of me at 5 holding a sparkler, my cheeks lit orange. I touched the glass. He winced. "I wanted you to see yourself when you walked in," he said softly, like an apology and a welcome at once. He led me down the hallway. "I didn't know your taste anymore," he said, "so I guessed." He pushed open a door with his shoulder and stepped aside. The room was already mine. A soft bed made tight with fresh white sheets and a denim blue quilt. A stack of new pillows that looked like marshmallows. A small desk with an adjustable lamp. Built-in shelves lined with books, some I loved as a kid, some I hadn't yet read but had once circled in library flyers. There were posters, a moon map in navy and silver, a vintage national parks print with lofty pines, a quiet ballerina stretching at a bar. A braided rug in lake colors lay on the floor. A plant in a mustard pot leaned toward the window, as if it had been living here, waiting. On the dresser sat a bowl of hair ties and a jar of gel pens in candy colors. A little note on the nightstand read, in his blocky, careful handwriting, "Welcome home, Kel." I stood at the threshold, dizzy with the kindness of it. The bed looked like trust you could climb into. I pressed my palm to the quilt to feel it be real. "When did you?" I started. "Months," he said. "Then more. Then, longer." He laughed, embarrassed. I kept adding things. The lady at the bookstore started recommending titles. "The plant is from Mrs. Ramos next door. She said a room needs a living thing." On the highest shelf, where it wouldn't crowd me, sat boxes. Not moving boxes, but gift boxes, some wrapped, some plain, each with a sticky note in the corner. "Open?" I asked. He swallowed. "They're yours," he said. "All yours." I pulled down the first one. The note said, "Kelly, 7th birthday." Inside, tissue paper crinkled, and there was a turquoise scooter bell, the exact one I'd pointed at in a catalog that year. I lifted it, stunned by its patience. The next box was tagged Christmas, year you wanted a chemistry set. Inside lay a small kit with bright powders, goggles, a booklet still stiff. Another box, 10th birthday book light for reading after lights out. Another, Christmas, silver locket with room for 2 photos. The tiniest one held a charm shaped like a tiny pancake pan. There were so many. Birthdays. Christmases. Notes in that same careful print that made each year feel accounted for, as if time hadn't been allowed to run wild without me. I didn't cry at first. I moved like I was in a museum, a docent of my own alternate childhood. I bought what you mentioned on the phone, or what your grandma said in her letters before. He cleared his throat. When the packages came back or I wasn't allowed to send them, I kept them. He rubbed the back of his neck. I wanted you to have the years, even if late. We sat on the floor, legs crossed. He pulled a small fireproof safe from under the bed, set it between us, and tapped in a code I didn't try to memorize. The lid opened with a weighty sigh. Inside were copies. So many copies. Photocopies of checks with the memo lines neat. Child support, school supplies, orthodontics. Printouts of bank transfers to an account with my mother's name. Stamped envelopes addressed to me in careful block letters, returned and re-stamped with yellow labels that read insufficient address or refused. He had paper-clipped them in bundles, labeled by year. There were letters, too. Some he had written and never sent because the last ones came back. First day of middle school, thinking of you. Heard about the hurricane, are you okay? Saw a girl with your hair at the grocery store, miss you. His handwriting marched across the pages, steady even when the words shook. He slid over a thin folder. Inside were invoices and receipts from a private investigator. My breath snagged. I didn't want to scare you, he said quickly. I needed to know you were okay. When the school refused to talk to me without her permission, I hired someone to check. To take a photo on the first day of school so I could see if you had a backpack, if you were smiling. I know it sounds, he swallowed. I was careful. He stayed far away. He only ever took one photo at a time. I turned the pages. There I was at 11, in an oversized hoodie, holding a flute case outside the band room. There I was at 12, hair frizzing in humidity, a science fair ribbon pinned crooked to my shirt. There I was at 13, sitting on the curb waiting for a late ride, chewing the string of my hoodie and pretending it was fine. The dates were in the corner, the school names handwritten under each photo like captions in an album no one had ever shown me. He reached into the safe once more and took out a worn manila envelope. Inside were copies of emails to my mother's address, subject lines polite and desperate, Kelly's winter break, permission to attend recital, medical consent form. Attached were her replies printed in sharp black, we have plans. She's busy. Stop contacting me. My hand shook. The room, with its gentle quilt and welcoming plant, blurred. It wasn't just that she'd left me at an airport. It was this long, quiet theft, time, letters, money meant for braces and books, a silver locket that waited years in a dark box. A record of someone looking for me while I was being told he didn't care. Why didn't you come? I asked, the question tiny and huge. I tried, he said simply. Court orders. Police at the door telling me I'd be arrested if I stepped on the property. Lawyers telling me to be patient. Judges who believed stories about me I couldn't bear to repeat to you. Every time I pushed, she pushed you further away. He rubbed his eyes with his thumb and forefinger. So I documented. I paid. I sent. I waited. And I prepared in case one day you knocked. He nodded toward the bed, the posters, the boxes. I never stopped setting a place for you, he said. I lay back on the rug and stared at the moon map. All those craters named, all that distance measured. The room hummed with the soft sounds of a house paying attention, the air vent sighing, the ice maker shifting, a neighbor's car door thunking closed. I stood and put the locket around my neck. It clicked shut with a sound so small it felt private. We can add photos, he said, voice careful around the hope. I looked at the stack of unopened years and the safe full of the proof of me. It wasn't a magic fix. But it was a map back to myself, page by page, receipt by receipt, a trail he'd laid while I'd been told there was none. My real father had been looking for me all this time. A week later, my mother called. The number flashed with her contact photo, an old selfie of us from the Lake Yola days, faces pressed together, both of us sun-flushed and smiling like a promise. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity picked up for me. Her voice came out sugar-sweet, the way she used to talk to waiters when she wanted a free dessert. "Honey, you misunderstood everything. We thought it would be good for you to be alone." Michael insisted. "It wasn't betrayal. Don't get yourself worked up." I stared at the neat handwriting on the note Dad had left on the counter, leftover pasta in the fridge, and felt my jaw ache. "You left me at the airport," I said. I tried to keep my tone flat, but the memory twisted it. "With cash. No key. No plan." "You're dramatizing," she chirped, as if I were rehearsing lines for a school play instead of describing my life. "Independence builds character. You're 14, not 4. Besides, we were going to FaceTime you from the resort every day. You couldn't possibly expect, look, Michael and I needed rest. Do you know the stress he's under? The clubs, the staff? We can't cater to everyone's emotions. You're strong. You can handle it." In the pause, I heard waves through the phone, either the ocean or a YouTube loop she played for ambience while she talked herself into a story. Flatware clinked. A laugh that wasn't hers floated across the line and then shrank away. She lowered her voice. "This energy from you? It's not helpful. When we get back, we'll reset. New boundaries. Family takes work." Something in me wanted to bite the hook, to step back into the old rhythm where I doubted myself and accepted her definitions. But Houston's air had a different gravity. Dad walked past, saw my face, and set a mug of tea by my elbow without asking. I looked at his hand, steady and ordinary. "I have to go," I told her. "We'll talk when you're back." She huffed a little, but smoothed it quickly. "Fine, Kel. Don't stew. Tell your father not to fill your head with nonsense. And be ready to apologize for the scene you made at the airport." It was embarrassing. After I hung up, the house felt so quiet I could hear the faint click of the cooling oven. I told Dad about the call, bracing for anger on my behalf. He didn't raise his voice. He nodded once, like he'd been expecting this chapter of the script. Then he set a thin stack of papers on the table, the edges aligned too carefully for a casual pile. "I was going to wait until you'd eaten," he said, almost apologetic. "But I think you should see this now. It's better that you know, and it comes from me." On top lay court records with my mother's name, my father's name, and mine in the caption, print so black and official it felt like it could bruise. 3 separate motions filed over the last few years, each with a date that made something inside me go cold. Motions to restrict contact, to limit visitation, to require supervised calls. I read the same phrase more than once, as if repetition could turn it into truth. Psychological pressure. "She accused you of..." I couldn't finish the sentence. The room was steady, my hands were not. He sat across from me, posture open, palms flat on the table like he was willing himself not to reach for me until I reached first. "Every time I tried to see you outside the schedule, she filed something. When I sent gifts without clearing them through her first, she called it manipulation. When I emailed your teachers to make sure you had what you needed, she told the court I was trying to control your environment." The phrase tested well. He smiled without humor. Psychological pressure. It made me sound invisible and dangerous at the same time. The orders weren't all granted. Some were denied outright, notes scribbled by judges in tight cursive, insufficient evidence, no basis. Some were granted temporarily while further facts develop. Each time I imagined him standing in a hallway like the ones on TV, suit too warm, under lights too bright, trying to explain how you love a daughter who is being turned into a case. He slid a smaller folder toward me, printouts of emails between lawyers, calendar entries for hearings, a receipt for a parenting class he'd attended because a mediator thought it would improve co-parenting communication. The next day we went together to pick up my things. "We'll be quick," Dad said, voice low but sure. "In and out. We're not there to argue." Houston to Orlando became a straight line inside me, a thread pulled tight. Michael's house looked the same from the curb, clipped hedges, glossy door, a sense that nothing unexpected could survive there. Mom's car wasn't in the driveway, but the lights were on. Ashley opened the door with sunglasses on her head like a crown. "You should have texted," she said, then stepped aside without touching me. Her gaze flicked to Dad, coolly curious the way people look at a celebrity they can't place. In the foyer, everything smelled like lemon cleaner and something sugary I didn't recognize. Tom peered around the corner, headset pushed to his neck. He lifted a hand that wasn't quite a wave. Michael didn't appear. Mom's voice floated from the kitchen, bright and brittle. "We're in here." She turned as we walked in, smile already assembled. It didn't reach her eyes. "Kelly, you look rested," she said, as if complimenting a stranger's baby. "Hello, Greg." She used his first name like it tasted bad. "We're just here for Kelly's things," Dad said. No apology, no small talk, no fight. His tone made it sound as simple as picking up dry cleaning. Mom's jaw tightened, but she gestured down the hall. "Be my guest. Take what you need." My room was exactly as I'd left it, which meant it wasn't mine. The bed was made tight. The blue swimsuit sat where I'd stuck it, absurdly hopeful on the chair. The braided rug had been vacuumed into perfect lines. I started with the obvious. Backpack, notebook, the one stuffed animal I hadn't admitted I still slept with on bad nights. Dad moved with quiet efficiency, opening drawers, handing me things I'd forgotten I owned. It happened when I tugged on the bottom dresser drawer and it stuck. I pulled harder. The face slid out, but the interior didn't move. Dad crouched beside me and tilted the drawer off its rails. Behind it, in the hollow space between wood and wall, lay a stack of envelopes banded together with a rubber band that had gone almost brittle. I knew the handwriting before I touched them. My name in careful print, the K a little too tall, the Y dipping like a swallow. The return address was Texas, each stamp different. Flags, flowers, a winter cardinal. None of the envelopes had been opened. One had a date from 2 birthdays ago. One had a tiny indentation, as if something small and hard inside had left its mark through the paper. There were more. Behind the stack, tucked like contraband, lay a few small packages, a lumpy one that crinkled like tissue paper, a flat one that could have been a book, a box with a dented corner. My hands shook so hard I needed both to slide them free. Mom stood in the doorway, arms crossed, lips pale. "I was going to give those to you," she said finally. Her voice carried the offended dignity of someone whose secret had been found, but who still believed she owned the narrative. You were so sensitive. I didn't want him stirring you up." Dad didn't look at her. He wasn't cruel. He just didn't waste his eyes on a scene he already knew by heart. He reached into the space again and pulled out a folder, thinner than the stack of envelopes, but heavier somehow. Inside was a printout of a draft email to her lawyer. The subject line read, "Custody clarification before summer." The paragraph I couldn't move past said, "Kelly is a burden. We need to make sure Michael doesn't feel pressured." The words sat there like wet cement, fresh enough to take a footprint. Burden. Pressured. I felt something old and private in me go cold and still, like a pond under sudden ice. There it was, in black and white, the way she had translated me for him, turned me into weight and noise. It made the airport sound like the logical conclusion instead of the shock it was. Ashley hovered, curiosity pulling her closer despite herself. Tom was a shadow behind her, eyes wide and unfocused in the way of someone who's hearing 2 realities at once. I set the draft on the bed, then picked it up again because letting it touch anything in my room felt wrong. Mom spoke first, words tumbling too fast to sound like truth. "You're twisting this. Lawyers need strong language. They told me to frame it. You know how these things go, Greg. Don't you dare judge me for advocating for stability in my own home." Dad gathered the letters into a neat pile as if they were fragile, as if mishandling them could bruise me further. "We're done here," he said quietly. It wasn't a threat. It was an announcement of weather, of facts, of the exact shape the air had taken. He slid the envelopes into a tote he'd brought, the one with the bookstore's name on the side. He put the small boxes on top. He handed me my backpack. "Anything else?" I looked around the room that had been curated for me and against me at the same time. The rug that didn't know my feet. The vacuum lines like raked sand in a garden I was not allowed to tend. I grabbed the plant from the windowsill. No, that had been in Houston. Here there was only a ceramic tray with rings that weren't mine and a candle that smelled like a beach I hadn't seen. "No," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "I have what I need." We walked back through the house. Ashley stepped aside. Tom lifted his hand again, a little higher. Mom stayed very still, as if movement would admit something she was not prepared to face. In the kitchen, the dishwasher hummed and a bowl of lemons sat perfect and untouched on the island. Outside, the afternoon heat hit us with a soft slap. We put my things in the trunk. Dad opened my door and waited while I got in, the way he used to when I was small, a ceremony that was half respect and half ritual. Through the windshield, I could see the blue shutters of our old house in my mind, then the white glare of the airport lights, then the moon map in Houston. In the quiet that followed, the words from the draft vibrated in my skull. Kelly is a burden. There was the lie she told herself so she could live with the life she wanted. There was the script she fed to a man who liked his glassware thin and his chaos outsourced. And there, beneath the court stamps, she had hidden most carefully, the decision to put me down so she could pick up something shinier. The court dates came fast, then slow, the way time moves when your whole life is being measured in affidavits and exhibit tabs. I remember sitting at a polished table in a room while our lawyers slid a binder toward the judge. My name was on the spine in neat black letters, a strange, official version of me. The judge read quietly for a long time. He asked a few questions. He looked at the copies of the returned letters, the child support receipts, the draft email that called me a burden. When he finally spoke, his voice was even, almost gentle, like he understood he was moving furniture inside of people. He appointed my father as my legal guardian. He ordered my mother to undergo mandatory therapy and to repay the money she had siphoned off over the years, child support that never reached my braces or books, gifts that were returned and resold, the thin, invisible theft of my childhood. The gavel didn't bang. He simply said, "So ordered," and the air changed. My mother did not speak to me in the corridor. She stood a few feet away with her sunglasses on inside, as if the lights were too bright for truth. Michael was not with her. She left through a side door, and I saw her shoulders for a second without the performance of her face. They sagged, then lifted, then squared again as if she were carrying an expensive bag you couldn't see. A week later, she came to my dad's house. She didn't call first. I heard the doorbell, then saw her through the peephole, mascara already smudged, a scarf looped like an apology. Dad opened the door and stepped back enough for me to stand beside him if I wanted. I did. She met my eyes and then darted away, as if I were a light that hurt to look at. I did everything for a better life, she sobbed, and the words had the rhythm of a line she'd practiced. You have to understand. I was tired, Kelly. I was drowning. Michael, he said we needed boundaries. He promised, her voice cracked and reassembled. I gave you clothes and food and a spare key at the neighbor's, I said, before I could stop myself. My voice didn't rise. It just stood there. And plane tickets without my name. She wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand, leaving 2 streaks. Don't speak to me like I'm a monster. I worked nights. I kept the lights on. Your father didn't see what I saw. He didn't live what I lived. People make mistakes. Dad didn't interrupt. He let the space be large enough to fit the truth. You could have asked for help, I said. Instead, you locked my birthdays in a drawer and called me a burden on paper. Her mouth opened and closed. For a second the mask slid, and I saw the smallness beneath the gloss: fear, pride, hunger for a life she thought she'd been owed. She tried one more angle, the old one. But you're strong, she said weakly. You can handle it. And I did, I answered. But I shouldn't have had to. She didn't throw herself at my feet or pound on the door. She nodded once, as if the verdict had been delivered a second time in a smaller court, and walked back to her car. Dad exhaled, shaky and quiet. We stood on the doormat a moment longer, both of us listening to the ordinary sound of a neighbor's lawnmower drift over the hedges. When the sound faded, we went inside and made pancakes. Dad burned the first one. I ate it anyway. Rituals repair what papers acknowledge. Life didn't become a montage of victories. It became a sequence of small, right choices. At 17, I was in a private school in Houston on a scholarship that felt like breathing room. The classrooms smelled like dry erase markers and hand sanitizer. The library's chairs were so comfortable I once fell asleep in one after finals. I joined debate because I wanted to learn how to turn the knot in my throat into sentences that landed. I took an elective called Family Systems and the Law, where I learned the dry names for the things that had been done to me. I made friends who met me where I was, not where I'd been. Maya, who wore her hair in a cloud and lent me highlighters in every shade of citrus. Jonah, who ran track and taught me how to breathe around a side stitch. We met for late-night study sessions at a diner where the waitress called everyone baby and refilled coffee until our hands trembled. They didn't ask for the whole story, and I didn't offer it. Instead, we traded small truths like snacks, favorite songs, worst cafeteria meals, secret ambitions. Sometimes I told them pieces, and they didn't flinch. Dad and I built a life that looked simple from the outside and felt astonishing from the inside. Saturday mornings, we took the dog we finally adopted, Sunny, more tumbleweed than retriever, to the park, then to the farmer's market where an old man sold peaches that tasted like August. I put 2 tiny photos in the silver locket, one of me at 5 with the sparkler, one of Dad and me standing in the kitchen with pancake batter on our knuckles. We replaced the shame in my chest with a calendar, college tours penciled in, application deadlines circled, courthouse volunteer days starred in red. On Tuesdays, I interned at the family courthouse. I didn't do anything glamorous. I filed. I fetched coffee. I learned that behind every tidy caption was a kitchen, a backpack, a kid trying to sleep with the TV on. The court's orders did their work in the background like a slow, necessary medicine. My mother went to therapy. The repayments came in installments monitored by the clerk and logged in a ledger that clicked forward with each entry. Sometimes my mother sent texts that sounded like someone else had written them, in therapy. Working on myself. Sometimes she sent none. I answered when I could answer without bleeding. I didn't perform forgiveness on command. By spring of junior year, I could say without flinching, I want to be a family lawyer. Not to relive what happened to me, but to stand where someone stood when a judge asked a quiet question and a gavel didn't bang. I wanted to be the person who slid the binder forward and said, "So ordered," ended up saving a kid's first day of school, a dad's Wednesday night phone call, a room with a denim quilt, and a plant leaning toward a window. When people asked me why, I could point to 100 reasons: a stack of unopened letters, a draft email that turned a daughter into weight, a plane that left. Your real family is not the ones who share your blood, but the ones who stay when you need them most. The airport was not the end, but the beginning of my freedom. If you were left at a gate, literally or in 1,000 quiet ways, please hear me. You are not the problem. You are not the reason other people chose comfort over courage. Someone will come for you, and if no one does, you can still come for yourself, step by step. Make the room you deserved and then live in it. Have your own parents ever betrayed you? Write in the comments below how you would have acted in my place. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel for listen more family shocking stories like this.